Hey there, Internet. Welcome to the Hard On Gear channel, where I discuss and review my used and abused knives and gear. Bam! Get some hardcore flipper action here out of the CRKT Fossil. This is about $100 knife Canadian, give or take, and probably $70 in the States. The big lacking area, we'll just say right now, is the 8CR13 MOV blade steel, which is something you'll typically find on a lot of anything from $20 budget knives to $50, $60 budget knives, typically not on a $100 knife. And I'm talking Canadian dollars. So this is a unique, super cool $100 knife from CRKT. What I do not think this would be is a good EDC, hard use, frequent user work knife. The big reason for that is the ergonomics and the amount of hotspots you're going to get from this super hard G10 and super rough kind of feel that the knife has. Extremely grippy, and if you were outside and you just wanted to use this thing for a few cuts, super cool. If you were going to rely on this thing for hours of repetitive use, I don't know, doing some roofing or carpentry or any kind of trade work, working in the woods, cutting paracord, I'll get to that. I think that would be a bit of a nightmare with this knife. Overall, not bad, but for those particular tasks, maybe something a little more generic. For example, the Wrap Model 2 here, of course the Wrap Model 1 if you want something larger, closer to this 9 inches, because this is about almost 9 inches in length, 3.96 blade length, just under 4 inches if you got some legal stipulations you're trying to dance around there, and just over 6 inches in weight. Now the Wrap Model 1 is lighter, about the same dimensions overall, but just a little more generic and a very minor, not even a sharpening choil. The end of the blade here just dips off a little bit, and you've got still the ability to sharpen right to the very end of the blade, but you don't have a big, huge looping hang-up spot there for when you're cutting cordage and all that. So a little more generic of a knife, a little more generic handle. The Wrap Model 2 being my dad's favorite knife, the one that he carries on him over everything else. And he's got a couple other things that I purchased for him, and he's not as big of a fan because they're just larger and or clunkier and or just don't have the same little simplistic feel as this thing does. But this guy likes a little more flashy stuff, and this is definitely a flashy knife. So for his purposes, depending on what when he's planning on carrying this knife, I'm sure it's going to do him just fine. I know he's got different knives and fixed blades and stuff that he can carry on him for work. And generally speaking, you don't need your fully knife all the time. The flipper action's pretty smooth on this. It's on bearings, the IKBS bearing system, whatever that acronym stands for. I honestly just read it. I have no idea what that is because I'm not a big bearings guy, not a big flipper tab guy. And you'll know this knife here looks a lot like a few big brands of flipper knives if you've ever seen a flipper knife before. This is probably reminding you of a few different things. This is not as smooth as I'm sure a lot of those different hinderers and stuff are. However, for $100, you're probably not going to find a whole lot better. The Luzon from Cold Steel actually is pretty smooth, also on bearings, but it's a little bit lighter, feels a little bit cheaper. This thing feels like a giant hunk of steel because guess what? It's a giant hunk of steel. Big ass backspacer, which I'm assuming is stainless steel back there, but coated black. Then you've got stainless steel frame with the 8CR13 MOV and the G10 scales. 6 ounces overall, feels every bit of it, and actually feels like you could probably hammer quite a bit with this, and assuming the steel is decent quality, it probably would hold up okay. But that's a frame lock folder for you. It's not meant to be dainty. What will be the issue though is your dainty little hands. So with gloves, you'll probably be okay. Without gloves, you're probably gonna hate this knife after the 5th or 6th cut or carve into a piece of wood. Now it depends on the person and the hand and all that stuff, but there are better ergonomics out there. Overall though, the cutouts and where the finger positioning is, it's not that bad, and different grips feel okay. A full-on bearing down on the knife 4-finger death grip does not feel comfortable, and I do not feel like there's enough handle for me to really grip around in the right places. Now the blade design of this is pretty wacky. It's cool, looks nice. The issue is sharpening this thing. So I touched this thing up. Luckily it's 8CR13 MOV, so it's pretty easy to sharpen. Won't hold an edge great, but it's a pretty good generic budget steel. Again, maybe not for a $100 knife. Probably could have slapped some D2 on there. I'd say most of the money and most of the cost into this knife probably went towards the design and the amount of detail work involved in finishing this knife. Definitely not so much in the blade steel. Also, the grind would take a little bit more time. You see you've got this false edge on the back, the weird thumb hole here, which has got a unique shape to it, and then of course just the actual grind of the blade itself. Again, the design of this knife is really, really cool. When I think about functional, practical field use, I don't like the idea of having my paracord get hung up in this sharpening choil. With a big recurve like this on a blade, you typically want to start your cut on cordage right around here, and then you pull through, and that's going to catch and cut the heck out of that cordage, almost like a kukri or like a bolo style blade. If you end up pulling here and it slips into that freaking choil, you're going to hate this knife and throw it out a window. If you go too far up this end, it's probably going to slide off, and if this thing's not razor sharp, which eventually it won't be because it'll get duller as you use it, it's going to slide off, especially with HCR13 MOV. It's going to slide off and not finish your cut. So I see this being a paracord's cutter's worst nightmare. If you're in a rush, if you have the time and you're doing it really slow and meticulously, not a problem. Ha! And looky here, what do I have? Who would have thought? Paracord. And this thing should still be popping a few hairs right now, so I think you're probably going to end up getting a decent cut no matter what. But as you continue to progress, you go to cut here and pull, and this thing slides down here. Yeah, screw you, right? If you go up here and you pull, it might slide off the top and not cut all the way through. Typically, you'd pull here, and you're going to get your maximum cutting potential from that belly. Just as this thing gets more dull, and if you're in a rush, you got to pull through here and slide it down. Oh, yeah, I could see that, how that's going to go for me right away. But that's one issue, and it depends on what you're doing. And if you're only cutting boxes, or I don't know, like going to an Outback Steakhouse or something, this would probably be a killer knife. Speaking of that, it does have kind of a Western feel to it, doesn't it? And a fossil, of course, makes me think of deserts and that kind of stuff. This would also actually make a pretty damn good pairing with the Buck 119, wouldn't you think? Just based on the colors and stuff. Anything else we could say about this knife? Looks like I'm seeing a T6 for a body screw and a T8 for a pivot. All kinds of the things holding this thing together. A few little holes in there for, I don't know, airflow or cleaning, or just aesthetics going through the center of the handle there, if that makes any difference to you. Again, not the worst knife in the world. It's not something I'm going to pick up for EDC purposes, but if you're picking this up as a gift for somebody or a part of a collection, or again, if you're just like, I don't know, going to an outdoor rodeo or something and you kind of want to have a knife that matches your giddy up, maybe this is the knife for you. Cheers again. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. This is the Hard On Gear channel signing off.